Welcome back to Andersen Acres. We're here in the barn today with Arwen, who is laying in the sand because it's actually lightly raining outside and she doesn't love getting wet. Most goats don't. So she's hiding in the barn, staying nice and dry. Today I wanted to talk about proper fencing for your goats because goats are notoriously hard to contain, okay? They may occasionally escape. Even if you have the best fencing out there, your goats might occasionally escape. That doesn't make you a bad goat parent. It just means your goats escaped. So if your goats do escape on occasion, don't beat yourself up. It's just the way it goes sometimes. So should your goats escape? No. Will they? Maybe. So before you bring your goat home, you really should have a goat-resistant fence. And I say goat-resistant, not goat-proof, because you might construct the best fence you can imagine, and everyone might agree, yeah, that's definitely going to work. That's going to keep your goats in. And then 2 days later, your goat is standing on top of your truck. Guess who that happened to? At our old place, we had goat-proof fencing. It's not goat-proof, it's goat-resistant. Here, we didn't bother. We'll talk about that next week. But this week, we're talking about fencing in your goat. When a goat wants to wander, they can be relentless in their effort to escape. They will climb fences. They will go under fences. They will fly, basically. You might never figure out how your goat got out. It can be very, very frustrating. When they're roaming, they tend to wander on the road, possibly get hit by a car, tend to dance on your car. They tend to eat gardens, and it might not all be in your yard. Your goat might go next door to your neighbors and cause some damage over there. And of course, if your goat does damage, you're liable for that damage. So, you really should try to keep your goat as contained as possible. Keep your goat in your property. So, how do you do that? First of all, start by not having tiny little paddocks. A goat with plenty of space to roam is less likely to decide that they can roam willy-nilly. So Arwen has our entire property to roam. Because she has our entire property, she does not feel like she needs to go wander in the neighbor's yard. So the bigger an area you can fence for your guys, and yes, it's very muddy, like I said, light rain. Rain's getting heavier. But the more space your goat has in order to move around, the better. So definitely give your goat as much space as possible because they will, one, appreciate it, but two, they're more likely to stay put in their paddock if they don't have these tiny little paddocks. You don't want tiny little paddocks, okay? You don't want a tiny little paddock because your goat is definitely going to try to get out of it because they're not happy about it. So give them as much space as possible. When it comes to the actual fencing, be aware that goats can squeeze through some pretty small gaps. So your traditional wood fencing is not suitable for containing your goats. And I say that knowing that the visible part of our fence, the yard-facing portion, is a wooden fence. We don't try to contain Arwen. Not anymore. We did it at the old location. Here we don't. So be aware that this kind of fencing, the whole post and board thing, is not suitable for goats. It's not going to keep them contained. It's just not going to happen. You absolutely have to have some kind of wire, okay? Look for what's called sheep and goat fencing is probably the most ideal because it's actually designed to contain goats. But you can also look for field fence or field mesh. There's a few different options. You want to secure it to your wood. Don't just use staples from your staple gun. Use actual, fence staples that you hammer in or another fastener to keep the wire on. Ideally, you would sandwich the wire between the boards. So you would put the wire on and then put another board on top of it and screw those together so that your wire does not come off if you're adhering your wire to wood. If you're just building a complete wire fence, you're still going to need to attach it to wood, but you might not sandwich it. Okay, so if you're just using posts and then you're going from post to post with your wire, then what you might do in that position is something like we have over here where we don't want them going out this way. And so you attach the wire to the post, and then you just stretch it and attach it to the other post. And yeah, it's a little messy back here. We threw everything we didn't want him playing with. Shadowfax. Don't bite my butt. Anyway, we threw everything we didn't want Shadowfax playing with on the other side of this fence. So, yes, you need to secure your wire. Even if it's just straight wire all the way across, you still need to secure it really well. Ow. Just my butt. Shadowfax biting my butt. But you want to secure it really, really well. What type of wires? Sheep and goat fencing is ideal. Something that your goat can't climb. Okay, because these little suckers, and of course it's going to depend on the size of your goats, but these little suckers can climb. Our one sucks at climbing because she's not very coordinated, but most goats can climb. So you want to make sure they can't climb the fencing. The best way to do that is to make sure their little feet can't fit in the wire at the bottom. So sheep and goat fencing, for example, has smaller holes at the bottom just so that they can't get their feet in there and start climbing. Has bigger holes towards the top because if they can't start climbing, they can't climb out. Having a good time, sweetie? You just don't want to be in the rain? Yeah, because the rain sucks. Yeah, I know. Rain does suck. So smaller holes at the bottom on your wire to prevent climbing. Okay? It's really important. It can kind of be expensive. Okay? A good wire to keep your goats contained can run you a pretty penny. But it does keep your goats in most of the time, and it looks good. So I would splurge on the money, on the good wire. You can use electric fencing. A lot of goats are unaffected by electric fencing. Okay, so Lily, who used to be in our videos before she passed away, Lily was unaffected by electric. Okay, it didn't bother her at all. You could turn it up, you could whatever. She would just blow through electric wire, the electric fencing. So you can try electric, and that might work for your goats, but it doesn't work for all goats. You also do not want to use barbed wire. Barbed wire can rip up people and animals, and especially if you have horses, you do not want horses getting caught on that barbed wire. So really, you shouldn't use barbed wire. It can really hurt you. It can hurt your goats. Skip the barbed wire. Go with a good welded wire like a sheep and goat fencing or something like that. You can also buy livestock panels that they're basically pre-wired. So they're basically your regular livestock panels, but they have like grates, right? So the goats can't get out. Those are really expensive, but they are a viable option if you hate installing fencing. And yeah, what? And a lot of us hate installing fencing. So because people hate installing fencing, sometimes they'll use the livestock panels. It's cheaper to use wire, to do post and wire. However, if you really don't want to do posts, you can use the livestock panels. They do work very well, as long as the holes are small enough that your goat can't climb up the panel and get out. How high should your fence be? At least 4 feet. 4 feet is typically perfectly fine for a goat because they typically can't get over it, and the rain is getting much harder. I can hear it on the metal roof. The rain is getting quite a bit harder. So, good thing we're in here, Garwin, but I have to walk back to the house in the rain. That's not fun. So at least 4 feet. Goats are real tricky, and if you do only a 3-foot fence, a lot of times your goats can jump it. And if they can't jump it, they can find something where they can climb over it. So 4 feet, and don't put anything next to the fence. So if your goats can climb on top of something, they can get over the fence. So don't put like benches next to your fence line, because the goat will get on the bench and then jump over the fence. They are fantastically acrobatic. Don't let Arwen fool you, because she sucks at jumping. But some goats are really acrobatic, so you definitely want a 4-foot fence and keep things like benches and buckets and things like that away from your fence line so they don't climb on top and clear that fence and cause all kinds of problems in your neighbor's yard. Because that's what they'll do. And here's where I'm going to get somebody saying, well, you don't have Arwen fenced in. She free ranges. Yes. And I'm going to talk about free ranging your goat next week. I'm not going to do it this week. We'll talk about free ranging your goats next week. However, I'm going to say right now, most people should not free range their goats, because most of the time it's a disaster waiting to happen. But we'll talk more about that next week. For now, we'll see you tomorrow.